Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is HD Starcraft and I'm here to bring you guys another Heart of the Swarm broadcast. And today we're going to be looking at two new fresh faces in the top left hand corner. We've got the red Protoss player. He is formerly a Korean professional Starcraft 2 player, but now has retired as he's got military duties in South Korea. But apparently that's not going to stop him from playing a little bit of Starcraft 2 here. It is Ares, and he is going to be in the top left hand corner. On the bottom right, we've got a Zerg player who I've casted a couple of times during the Heart of the Swarm beta and is very, very fun to watch. He's extremely talented, has been playing up against some of the top players outside of the United States and outside of Europe, namely Korea, Taiwan, obviously the Asian region. He is very, very good, and I'm very excited to see how this is going to go down. It's going to be a Zerg versus Protoss. And one thing about the Zerg versus Protoss in HOTS that's a little bit different about Wings of Liberty is the Protoss ability to go into late Sky Toss, and that means motherships, carriers, void rays, Tempest, all of that stuff is actually really hard for Zerg to stop. In fact, David Kim even came out and said, hey look, we noticed that there might be a little bit of problems for Zerg in the late game. We're monitoring the issue, and that's something that might be changed in the very near future. So we'll see if that is indeed what's going to happen in this game. It looks like Blade is going to be throwing down a spawning pool right now. The drone is trying to get that probe out of the way, but unfortunately a probe can run around the base for a considerable amount of time, especially with the ability for its shields to regenerate, and it has full scouting information and is going to return home. One thing I do want to mention right now before the game gets underway, of course, as I'm doing in all of my casts, is just doing a shout out for the community. If you guys have any sick games you want me to cast, whether it's pro players or even yourselves, and you have links to those replays, or you want to send me an email with the replay itself, feel free to send it in to HDreplays@gmail.com. That is actually a funky looking pylon. I've never seen a pylon that has this little crystal at the top before. It might be something that Ares got for, I don't know, this might be, he might have like a collector's edition of StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm or something weird like that, but that is a very funky looking pylon, and that is obviously his little specialty right there. So that's pretty cool, and we'll see if he decides to throw actually a pylon at the natural. No, he did not, so he is going to let Blade get that natural expansion down, and Blade obviously looking to get an expansion as soon as possible, because in all matchups in StarCraft 2 for Zerg versus Protoss, you must get that expansion down as soon as possible. A lot of times Zerg have a hard time dealing with the probe blocking the natural, and on this map especially, if you let that probe block your natural, you're forced to go all the way out here, and it's suboptimal. So it's good that Blade was able to get that down, and now he's got Zerglings on the map as well. So that is going to push this scouting probe away. I think at the last glance, Ares was able to see nothing. So there's really actually nothing for Blade to show here. He hasn't even thrown up a gas yet, so he's going gasless, which indicates to me that we're going to be seeing a long macro game ahead of us. Most likely not going to be any early aggression coming out of Blade, as he's looking to control as many bases as possible. He's even got the third coming down right now, and he's obviously going to look to play for that late game Zerg versus Protoss. But then when you think about it, what about the Sky Toss? That's something that I'm sure Ares is well aware of, and if he indeed decides to go for Stargate play, then I think Blade might have a little bit of something that he's got to deal with, because as I said before, that late Sky Toss is just so strong. The Zerg players still haven't figured out a way to counter it. You might say, well, Infestors are pretty good against air, they always have been, and that is true, but they have received some nerfs as well going into Heart of the Swarm. So especially Infestors, they're good, but the problem then becomes carriers and their interceptors, and even Tempest can snipe the Infestors from far away. So it's not really the end-all solution to Sky Toss, and we'll just have to see what happens if indeed the Protoss player decides to go into aerial combat or not. For now, it looks like he's going for basic opening, nothing too funky yet. He's got one gas at the natural, two gases back in the main, and he's starting to make a Stalker right now. It looks like there are a few, I don't know what the hell's going on. It looks like we've got a Zealot that just hacked and slashed that Zergling down. Very cool looking Zealot, too, different color scheme, I suppose. It's kind of like a red and black Zealot now making its way across the middle of the field. And we shall see what the Zealot can do. Unlikely that he'll be able to accomplish much besides scouting, possibly for the third base, and I think that's exactly what he's going for right now, as he's going to make his way over, and he actually already knows that the third base is up, so I'm assuming that this Zealot is going in just to confirm that the hatchery wasn't cancelled, and on top of that, if the hatchery is there, maybe he can go in and harass these drones a little bit, and that's exactly what he's going to try to do. But Zergling's already here, and that Zealot is in a little bit of trouble. I don't think he's going to be able to get out of here. He's trying to walk inside the hole here and close off the gap. Now he's going to try to go for drones instead. Man, this Zealot is such a beast, but he is going to eventually go down. And very nice micro right there from Blade, because actually he did not lose a single unit there. I was keeping my eye on this battle. He didn't lose a drone, he didn't lose a Zergling, so he's been able to keep his losses to a minimum throughout this game. We'll see if he continues to be able to do that. We do have a Twilight Council coming up in the back for Ares, so probably not going to see Stargate for some time, as he's probably looking to go for Templar tech here. He's also got a robotics facility to get an observer out as well. No support base, so I'm not thinking we're going to see Colossus yet. But as is typical in Protoss versus any matchup, Colossus eventually make their way on the field some way, somehow. That Zergling did just get taken out, and the Nexus is going to go down, so Ares is now approaching his third base. Doesn't want to fall behind to Blade, who has been on 3 bases for some time right now. And you can see on the income tab, surprisingly, I have to say, Blade isn't as high up in drones as you would think. In Zerg versus Protoss, around the 8 to 9 minute mark, you want to be around 70 or so drones. I'm surprised he doesn't have more. He's making 10 more right now. So I guess maybe he's just a tad late, but you know, it's not that bad at all. Typically for a Zerg player, I feel like once you approach 9 minutes, you want to be around your maximum drone count. Yeah, he's going to be there pretty soon. It's not a big deal. Back over on the Protoss base, he does have Blink on the way, and he's got robotics support bay coming down as well. So we're going to be seeing, I guess, more of a standard Wings of Liberty style. I'm going to go for Colossus. I'm going to get some Blink Stalkers as well in order to snipe off potential Corruptors, should you be going Corruptors, to counter my Colossus. The one thing, though, is in Heart of the Swarm, Zerg players no longer have to go for that kind of old school Brute Lord Infestor style anymore. In fact, what's become really prevalent now is Roach Hydra. Roaches are really good, obviously, always have been, but they kind of diminished in effectiveness because they didn't have a good support unit in Wings of Liberty. They do now, though, with the Speed Hydralisks. And in fact, we even have some Swarm hosts coming out from Blade as well. We'll see if that'll be able to stop this assault. I think so. I think Ares may be getting a little bit ahead of himself, just punching out a couple of creep tumors and then saying, all right, mission accomplished, I'm out of here. Just slowing the progression of that creep. I mean, every little thing does help, but you can see here that Blade's got a queen with more than enough energy to drop down some more creep tumors, and that's exactly what Blade is going to do, as Evolve Enduring Locust is now, you guys can see, is researching on that infestation pit. And so, pretty soon here, guys, we're going to have Roaches. I think Roaches, Hydras, and Swarm Hosts is going to be Blade's composition of choice. And that's a very, very potent potent army, but you do have to be careful about dealing with too many Colossus. And that's where your Roaches and Hydras and their micro comes in. If you're not going to rely on Corruptors, you need to be able to snipe Colossus by being on creep, rushing the Roaches and Hydras forward, and pushing the Colossus away. Otherwise, they'll just stand there and laser your army down from a distance. So that's what I'm looking to see Blade go for here. And on top of that, that's why I think Ares might want to think about going for Stargate eventually, because as I said before, it's just so good against the traditional way of playing against Protoss right now, which is Roaches, Hydras, and sometimes Swarm Hosts. You gotta go into Stargate, and that's exactly what Ares is doing. So I guess you read my mind. He's adding on 2 Stargates right as I was looking back in his base, and I think that's a great idea. If he can supplement his army with Tempest, Void Race, eventually even Carriers, if he can get a Fleet Beacon out, it just makes his army so much more deadly against the Zerg. And in fact, you know, Swarm Hosts are almost neutered. When they run into air-based units, they have no way to stop them. And so I definitely feel like Ares is doing the right thing here. So he's gonna wait, he's gonna sit back, he's gonna max out his army, and he's gonna wait for some Stargate-based units as well. The Locusts, actually, with their Evolve Enduring Locusts, look at how close they get to the front door of the Protoss base. You know, just a few footsteps away, and they're starting from all the way back here. You can see how effective Evolve Enduring Locust really increases the range of a Swarm Host and their ability to attack with Locusts. Meanwhile, Ares is going down to the 4th tier. You can see how paltry his army really is. He's just got a few Colossus, a couple of Zealots and Sentries. The reason why his army doesn't look as big as you normally expect is because he's going into Stargate. So he's buying time right now to get into that eventual you know, capital airship mode, and he's taking his sweet time, which is fine. You know, on this map, you can sit back and play defensive toss very easily. There's a lot of choke points, easily defended, like his play so far. Blade, though, to counter the Colossus, is going for Vipers, and that's a unit I totally forgot to mention. The Viper, one of the new units available to Zerg in Heart of the Storm, able to abduct a Colossus and bring it in closely. Very, very good against Colossus. It's a absolutely powerful supplement to Roaches and Hydras. So I like what Blade is going for here. In fact, I've seen him use this exact comp to great effect in the beta, so I'm looking forward to seeing him do it right here against Ares, as he is actually going up to a 4th base right now. This game, we really haven't seen too much action yet, which is, I guess, a little disappointing, but I'm sure all hell is about to break loose at any moment here, because both players have so many bases right now. The Zerg is going into the 5th base, the Protoss is going into the 4th base. We do have a little bit of a skirmish going on here, but this is just the Locust. But eventually, I do feel like once Ares, I think the ball is kind of at Ares' court here. Once he gets his Stargate units out, he'll probably look to move out, unless Blade applies pressure earlier on. But Blade seems content to just sit back and continue sending in this Locust army, which, you know, it is doing some damage. You have to consider, there's a Zealot that just died, there's another Zealot that just died, and the 3rd Zealot just died. So that resources loss tab is going to start to swing heavily in favor of the Zerg if he's allowed to continue, you know, doing this little bits of damage with this line of Locusts. And I think Ares is probably going to have to do something about that. He's actually sending all of his Zealots on a secret mission here. And I guess that's not a bad idea, but considering, you know, the Zealots are totally worthless against these Locusts, why not send them on a Counter-Strike mission? And it looks like he's going to go for this base, but Blade is already here with a very large army, and it's going to shut down these Zealots. They have nowhere to run, and a great counter by Blade. That's going to shut down that Zealot attack right in its tracks. And in the background, we have Ultralisk coming in. We have got Chitinous fighting from the Ultralisk Cavern as well. Psionic Storm is now coming from the Templar Archives. So we're rounding out almost the entire tech tree here that is available for both races. The only thing we haven't seen yet is a fleet beacon, which means carriers. But we might just. It's now 17 minutes into this game. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the Protoss and the Zerg to engage. They're both now starting to move out into the middle of the map. The Protoss especially, he's taken out several creep tumors, but there are Ultralisks here, and Ultralisks are so good in Heart of the Storm. Look at the Vipers coming in and abducting those Colossus and bringing them in close range. But unfortunately for those Ultras, the Void Rays just turned on Prismatic Alignment, and that gives them such a bonus amount of damage against the Ultralisk. It almost rips them to shreds. It's essentially the Void Ray goes into level 2 like it did in Wings of Liberty, and that's very, very deadly against those Ultras and their armored hides. So great play by Ares. He just kind of pulled back. He lost a few Colossus, but he was able to kill off the majority of the Zerg army, and that's going to now allow the remainder of his Protoss army to go ahead and take out all these creep tumors and maybe launch an attack over to this base up here on the top right. Lots of spine crawlers now trying to get in position. Zerg army also trying to get in position. Swarm hosts are not in position, though. They are not shooting out the Locusts. They do get taken out, but the Vipers come in and abduct all the Colossus, and the Roaches and Hydras are able to clean up. But I do believe that Ares is going to win this fight. He simply has too many Protoss forces here. Storm coming down on the Locusts to finish them off, and the Swarm hosts do not have Locusts ready. It looks like the Locusts just came off cooldown, and that's going to allow them to sprout out here, but I don't think it's going to be enough to defend this hatchery. We'll see. There is a lot of spine crawlers, so the Void Rays are now going to be solely on the duty of taking out this base. They don't have prismatic alignment yet, which does mean that their damage is considerably lowered. But at the same time, he is warping in reinforcements from this pylon, and I think this base is going to go down. Prismatic alignment is almost online for all these Void Rays as well, but it needn't be. But it looks like the Hydras are going to be just enough to defend the hatch, and wow! That right there for Blade, I think, couldn't have gone any better, because when you think about it in terms of a game of StarCraft 2, you want your opponent to commit as many resources as he can, and then at the very last second fail miserably, and that's exactly what happened to Ares. He committed everything he had to this attack, and those Hydras came in literally at the last second. That was super clutch, and I think Blade has got to be happy with that engagement. If I were him right now, I'd bring a couple of Queens here, drop a few Transfuses, and bring that hatchery back up out of the critical range. And maybe think about making a move to gain control in the center of the map, start to spread out creep tumors once again, maybe even make an attack as a counter threat to stop Ares from getting another base. And it looks like that may be what he's doing. He's bringing his forces down now to the bottom. He's also got a Greater Spire on the way. Vipers, of course, getting their energy from the evolution chambers. And over in the Protoss base, I still don't see a fleet beacon, which I still feel like, you know what, if he could go for Fleet Beacon, if he could get some carriers out, that would really augment his army in a way that I'm not sure Blade would be able to stop. But as of right now, he's got to focus his efforts on defending his new Nexus. He cannot afford to lose this. The Locusts are now starting to make their way in, and look at this Ultra Hydralisk army. Going to take a look at the upgrades here. 1, 3, 2, and the Protoss has 3 weapons, so Protoss is behind on upgrades here. And I think momentarily we'll see if Blade decides to make an attack. It looks like he's gearing up for it, and he waits for the Nexus to complete, so there's no hope of cancellation. Viper's coming in, abducting those Colossus in range, but the Storm is going to rip up some of those Hydras, and the Ultras were not in the best position either. Ares is going to be able to make a defense here. Very nice for him, and that Nexus is going to stay alive. So good play. Although the Swarm Hosts and their Locusts will be able to apply continuous pressure here on this location. And Ares will need to bolster it up with more forces. He's actually coming down the ramp here. Surprisingly, he doesn't even have charge yet for his Zealots, which I think is a mistake. I'm not too sure, you know, he's got so many Zealots in his army. Why not drop 200 and 200 to get charge at this moment in the game? But he is actually going to be able to push these units away, and as they're fleeing, it's going to force Blade to engage because he's going to lose so many forces if he stays, if he just continues running. But he wisely burrows down, lets the Locusts come out, and then pulls out of the way. So that actually allowed him to save some of his units in retreat, and now he's back on the creep, so I don't think that Ares is going to make another attack. Really close game right now. It's been back and forth for the last couple of minutes. You can see the resources lost, which makes a lot of sense. The Zerg has lost more units, but in terms of actual resources, they've lost about the same. Of course, that's because Zerg has more units in general, so that makes a lot of sense right there. Both players are, I think, extremely close in this game. Zerg is on almost 5 bases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 bases, and the Protoss is now solidly on 5, so you could not hope for a better late game scenario here. ZVP, I still feel like Ares needs to think about going for Fleet Beacon to get some carriers out. I'm not sure why he hasn't yet, as, you know, Blade is about to go into potentially Broodlords here, and against Broodlords you must get Tempest. But hey, here comes Blade. He's actually found a way, an avenue to attack through using Blinding Cloud to shut down those photon cannons, and here comes a Protoss army, but it was completely out of position, although it looks like Blade is now going to pull out so he gets a better surface area during this attack. Very smart. He yanks the Colossus inwards, and that is going to bring the majority of them in, and I think that Blade should be able to win this fight. The Storms are quite crippling, however, but I think, yes, he will be able to win the battle, and Ares now has to pull back. It's been so close, so back and forth. We'll see what happens here. It looks like Ares might have enough reinforcements. He's bringing in more Zealots, even though they don't have charge. It should be enough to push this army back. So once again, the tug of war continues. But the problem here for the Protoss player is the Zerg had his position with his Swarm Host, and he's been able to continually apply pressure with these Locusts. And he's actually shut down 3 of the warp gates, and this base could very well fall as Ares says, alright, screw it, I'm not even going to try to defend the base. He's actually going down to the bottom now, and he's going to attempt to go eye for an eye, which is a really interesting decision. I would have thought he would try to defend this base, but instead he's going to go on the offensive, and I don't think that's going to bode well for him at all. He's running into all of these reinforcing Zerg units, and the Ultras are just ready and waiting to take those Stalkers to Protoss heaven, and or hell, whether they've been bad or good. But Ares, yeah, he's gonna have to pull out. That's not a good attack for him, and all the warp gates at the front died, saving just the Nexus, which is interesting. You would think Blade would take out that Nexus, as there is minerals to be made there, but maybe he's worried about, maybe Blade is worried about taking out the new base down here. Instead, there is a couple of blinding clouds going down, shutting down those photon cannons. Ultras don't care about the cloud. They're considered melee units, of course. But I feel like with those storms, maybe Ares can hold on. He's activating Prismatic Beam. He's trying to use every ability under his possible umbrella of technology, but he's running low on units. He's running low on resources as well. Look at the top right-hand corner. He has not even close Not even close to the amount of money that Blade has. Look at that surplus right there. He could start his own bank and then pay for his children and his children's children and even his children's children college all the way, you know, down the line, down many generations. He is so rich right now. That is amazing. And I think just from an economic standpoint, probably looks like Ares isn't going to be able to win this game at this moment, as he's even down in supply, 114 to 194. So I do feel like Blade has this game in the bag. Looking at the upgrades here, yeah, he's got upgrade advantage. It's pretty close actually, but yeah, I think once he decides to max out his army with all the money he's got, how in the world is Ares going to be able to hold on? And I really feel like maybe Ares just missed out this game. Maybe if he had gone with Fleet Beacon to get some carriers out, it would have really helped his army, but unfortunately he was never really able to recognize the final tier of the Protoss air units, and unfortunately for him, I really feel like it would have helped Tempest and carriers combined, but now he's kind of stuck with what he's got. And this has kind of been the story of Zerg and Protoss. Even in the campaign mode, it's the Zerg constantly putting pressure. They killed off the Protoss homeworld of Ire. They forced them to, they evicted them to Shakuras, and you know, Protoss just doesn't have enough of an army to stop the constant onslaught, the swarm. And Blade here, I think, is going to get the victory. I mean, he might lose this battle, but he won't lose the war. I guess that's the bottom line, because he's just got way too much money, and I think he's actually going to win this battle as well. Look, he's even, what are these zealots doing? Oh, they're not zealots, they're changelings. Alright, so I was getting a little confused by the color scheme there, but they were not real zealots, they're just changelings. And, yeah, I think Blade is just now saying, well, I think the next wave is probably going to be able to finish you off, barring some type of Protoss miracle, unless you can go to the Warp Conduit and call upon the Golden Armada. I don't see any way how the Protoss is going to win this game. It's just not going to happen. And here comes all the Swarm hosts, all the Hydras for the final battle. A valiant effort, I feel like, by the former Korean pro Ares. You know, he's playing against a phenomenal Zerg player. Blade is just incredible. I've casted some amazing games with him before. So, really, really amazing game. Once again, I just want to reiterate, if you guys enjoyed these casts, feel free to subscribe at YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at HD Starcraft. But this might be the final battle. Viper's coming in, abducting the Colossus. He goes down, and there it is. Korean, I think that's the well played, the WP. And GG. So very, very nice game right there. I hope you guys enjoyed a 31-minute battle, and it was a bit of a macro fest for the first 15-17 minutes, but things started to really get interesting towards the last 13 minutes or so. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, feel free to submit any cool replays to hdreplays@gmail.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video. This is HD, signing out.